Hello, valued viewers. I hope you're all doing very well. Just a gentle reminder that the Super Thanks button is on. It is located on the taskbar near the like button. Contribute $20 or more toward the channel's effort and get a video of your choice topic done as the next available project. Simply make the contribution, go to the comment section of that video, and describe the topic that you would like to have done, and I do it just as soon as I possibly can. Now on to the video. Commissioner Patterson. On August the 3rd of 1950, at about 9:22 a.m. at Cheyenne, Wyoming, the Union Pacific Railroad locomotive number 820, while running light, unattended, at an estimated speed of 70 miles per hour, collided with a diesel-electric locomotive which was moving slowly in switching services. An engineer, fireman, and a switchman were killed, and another switchman was seriously injured. All casualties were members of the switching crew. Okay, so we'll start off with the description of the locomotive. It was literally the first locomotive, that being the 820, of the FEF2 series of locomotives built for the Union Pacific Railroad by ALCO in August of 1939. The cylinders were 25 by 32 inches diameter. The driving wheels were 80 inches. The weight of the locomotive in working order is 478,640 pounds. The weight on the driving wheels was 265,520 pounds. The tractive effort was 63,800 pounds. All locomotive and tender wheels were equipped with Timken roller bearings. The locomotive was equipped with Welsh-Shirt valve gears, Franklin Type E reverse gear, Nathan 3-inch non-lifting injectors on the right side, and Sellers improved exhaust feed water heater injectors on the left side, a Type E superheater, front-end multiple throttles, Franklin Type E radical or radio buffer, Westinghouse's number 8 ET locomotive brake equipment, 3 indication USS coded cab signals, and Chicago pneumatic 120 mile per hour speed recorder. The tender's oil capacity was 6,000 gallons. The water capacity is 23,500 US gallons, and the loaded weight of the tender is 416,960 pounds. The Union Pacific Railroad locomotive number 820 was called to leave Cheyenne, Wyoming at 6:55 p.m. August the 3rd of 1950 and was used as a front-end helper on a westbound passenger train at the top of Sherman Hill, which is 31 miles from Cheyenne, where it was detached from the train, turned around, and returned light to Borie, Wyoming, which is 9.5 miles west of Cheyenne. So when they use the term light, basically that means that the locomotive was detached by itself, and then it was turned around, and then it would return to Borie, Wyoming in this case. So once the locomotive number 820 gets to Borie, the locomotive was left on the eastbound track on the main line, unattended, and that's when the engineer left to respond to a telephone message in the tower, and the fireman went back to flag. So folks, this is kind of like you and I just getting out of our car on the main highway and just getting out and go to the bathroom in the bushes or something. You know, this is just absurd. So after being left unattended for an estimated 5 to 10 minutes, the train starts moving forward and continued to increase speed because why? It was on the descending part of the line. Not only was it on the main line, but it was also a descending part of the main line. And it kept moving until it struck the rear of the Union Pacific diesel electric locomotive number 1149 while it was running that speed of approximately 70 miles per hour at that time. So it was a runaway locomotive going 70 miles an hour, the 820 was. The diesel unit was pushing a cut of cars eastward in the roundhouse load of Old Yard in Cheyenne at the time it was struck. So the collision occurred on a double-arched stone bridge approximately 1/2 mile west of Cheyenne Station. The diesel switching unit, which was practically demolished, came to a rest on its left side on the southeast bridge abutment with front end near the bottom of the bank. Number 820 came to a rest on its left side, nearly crosswise of the tracks at the east end of the bridge, with its front end wedged against the cab of the diesel. It was also badly damaged. The tender was torn away and was lying on its left side on the bridge, and extensive damage to the track on and off the bridge and to the freight cars and lading also resulted. Okay, so get this. Back at Borie, where all this started, the elevation was estimated at 6,560 feet. But get this, the track was a downward grade of 1.3% descending. This is insane, folks. Why do you leave any locomotive unattended on a downward grade like that? So while 820 was a runaway going eastward, the to the point of the collision, approximately 9 miles, the grades were descending, varying from a maximum of 1.55% to 0.76%. At the point of the collision, the track was tangent or nearly even. The grade was 0.1137% descending, and the elevation was 6,061 feet. So needless to say, everyone on that diesel switcher were all killed. And well, I won't go into how they were killed and what exactly they looked like, but it was brutal. Just put it that way. Okay, so within 30 minutes after the collision, the carrier's mechanical superintendent in charge of steam power made an examination of locomotive 820 and found the controls in the following position. The throttle lever was closed and latched, but the pin was out of place. The reverse lever was 12 teeth forward and blanked portion near center, with the blank extending from center to 33% cutoff. The automatic brake valve was in a running position. The independent brake valve halfway between lap and slow application position. The engine brake cutout cock was open. The steam-operated cylinder cocks were closed. Both injector steam valves were closed. The tires were warm from running, but brake shoes were cool. The CP speed recorder hand was at 120, but that was because the locomotive was laying on its left side. And I also thought here that the initial inspection was made by a Union Pacific superintendent, which I would think nowadays, and I could be wrong, that would not be permissible, basically so you can't tamper with any of the evidence, what may have happened and that kind of thing. So let me know in the comments if I'm right or wrong about that. So after the locomotive 820 was righted and, put up straight and whatnot, an inspection of the throttle systems and all its associated equipment was made, and really there's nothing remarkable with any of that. It was basically as you would expect from a stop locomotive, and under any normal condition. So they had a speed recorder tape which was removed during the investigation, and it showed the locomotive had been traveling at 45 miles an hour after moving 1 mile from Borie, 55 miles an hour after 2 miles, and over 60 miles an hour after 3 miles. The speed then increased very slowly to a maximum of 74 miles per hour, which is that 6 miles from Borie, and that was maintained to the point of collision. The speed recorder was removed from the bracket and cab and tested on the CP speed recorder calibrating machine of Chicago Pneumatic Tool Company. Slight errors were found which showed corrected speed at the time of collision was probably slightly above 70 miles an hour. So once they got the 820 righted and whatnot and back to Cheyenne, basically the inspectors focused on the pneumatic braking system of the 820 and, checking the lines and whatnot of that sort. And they had found a faulty gasket of some sort that was allowing a substantial air leak within the line itself. And they couldn't quite verify it, so suspecting maybe something was up with that, they used the number 830 of the same class of locomotive, which is the FEF2 in this case, and to basically reenact the events of the accident and whatnot and see how that particular locomotive responded to the certain environments. So when I go through these reports and whatnot with these accidents and I see something like that, I like to go to the maintenance reports from the engineers and see what was actually done from a maintenance point of view to fix the situations that were reported. And this one was really interesting. Probably of all the accident videos that I've done in the past, this is actually the most interesting and egregious, if you ask me as well. But there, from July 1st all the way to August 3rd, there were some 31 reports made for maintenance requests on this particular locomotive, of which about 26 of them involved the throttle and the braking system. And I'm going to read the August 3rd entry, which is the last one before the actual accident, and you can get an idea what the other 26 or so reports said. So on August 3rd at Cheyenne, Wyoming, the road foreman reported the main throttle hard to unlatch, also hard to handle, either shutting off or pulling out. Repairs not signed for and report not approved. The engineer reported the throttle valves worked too hard. No repairs were shown. Notation throttle, there's a notation that the throttle examined and found safe for service, and that was signed by the foreman. The inspector reported oil and pack air pumps. That needed to be done, and the engineers and inspectors' reports were approved by the foreman. So as I mentioned, there's about 25 other reports of something similar to this. So that just tells us that basically no one wanted to take the time to disassemble this throttle gear and the expected braking line for any issues, but rather they did the quick fix of just greasing something up, put it back together, and throw the locomotive out back on the main line, and says it's really ready to go and fit for duty. So going back to the accident questioning itself, when the inspectors questioned the engineer and the fireman and the personnel from the 820, the engineer was questioned with regard to the possibility that he brushed against the independent brake valve handle, which is 30 inches ahead of the seat backrest when leaving on the right side of the cab. But he seemed positive that the handle was left in a slow application position, and stated that he was wearing no bulky outer clothes or gloves that might have brushed that lever and unapplied the brakes. The fireman's statement agreed in substance with that of the engineer. After a stop at the Borie Tower, he took flagging equipment and walked back along the tracks, placing a lighted rod fuse 100 feet from the tender. As he continued, he met a crew member of the work train, which was standing on the passing track, who said that the Locomotive 820 appeared to be moving. The two men ran back to the fusee and extinguished it to afford better vision. By that time, they saw that the locomotive had moved from the tower. And when they reached the tower, they saw that the locomotive engineer was returning from his unsuccessful chase. He then looked at his watch and noted that the time was 9:04 p.m. He accompanied the engineer to Tower A west of Cheyenne and estimated they arrived there at 9:20 p.m. So in the official findings of the inspection of the locomotive itself, it was in fact due to some kind of defect in the air brake system, a valve to be more specific. And I find it interesting, though, that the final report actually goes out of its way not to indicate that the engineman and the firemen, abandoned the locomotive or left the locomotive unattended on a decline, descending grade. That's crazy. In no way in heck in today's world that passes. Maybe that was okay to do back then, but that's just nuts to do that. So I'm going to say that's reason number one, and then the faulty brake line is reason number two. But the actual writing says that this accident was primarily resulted from a defective core plug in the valve portion of the distributing valve. The plug was chamfered and formed to a circumferential groove with the valve body, which was not filled by the gasket, and permitted the loss of air pressure in the application chamber to the extent that the distribution valve moved to release position on its own, and that bled air out of the brake cylinder pressure with the automatic brake valve in running position, and that released the brakes on the locomotive and thus initiated the chain of events which culminated in the collision. It is found that this accident was primarily caused by a hidden defect in the distribution valve, which resulted in the release of the brakes on the unattended locomotive that was standing on a descending mainline track, and that was dated on the 6th day of October of 1950 by ACC Commissioner Patterson.